When we picture a Third World War, we imagine massed tank divisions rolling across a continent or amphibious landings on contested beaches. But the reality of modern conflict looks less like a battlefield and more like a systemic failure of the things we rely on to stay alive. This map shows 30 geopolitical flashpoints evaluated in the 2026 Preventive Priorities Survey. Experts now rank 28 of them as having a moderate or high likelihood of occurring this year, marking a breakdown in the traditional mechanisms used to avoid escalation. Because these flashpoints are so numerous, military doctrine is shifting. Great powers are moving away from engaging armies directly and are instead focused on targeting the economic and societal structures that allow a nation to function. The modern world is vulnerable because the global economy is not a decentralized web. It is a concentrated machine of physical and digital choke points, narrow corridors that manage nearly all our energy, food, and data. In a contemporary global war, the primary objective is no longer the conquest of territory. Instead, it is the deliberate triggering of a rapid contagion across these trade, food, and data nodes. To understand how this fragmentation begins, we have to look at the Strait of Hormuz, the most critical physical choke point in the global energy market. Look at the scale of this specialized LNG vessel. Before recent conflicts, 27% of global oil and 20% of global liquefied natural gas funneled through this single point every day. Securing this passage against modern asymmetric warfare is a losing game. Low-cost drones, naval mines, and coastal missile batteries can effectively trap thousands of trading vessels in a localized kill box, making the cost of transit impossible to sustain. This creates a paradox. Heavily armed superpowers, like the United States and China, possess massive naval fleets, but they cannot simply shoot their way through these blockades to protect their commercial interests. Traditional military supremacy struggles to secure a narrow corridor against persistent, low-cost asymmetric threats. Superpower status does not guarantee the freedom of navigation for commercial vessels when a shipping lane becomes an active kill box. In this image, industrial smokestacks set right next to agricultural fields. This is because the liquefied natural gas trapped in the Persian Gulf is the primary chemical feedstock for synthesizing the nitrogen fertilizers we use to grow food. This dependency is staggering. 40% of global calories are grown using nitrogen-based inputs. If gas stops, calories disappear. When fertilizer vanishes, farmers adapt during spring planting, moving away from fertilizer-heavy corn to soybeans, which need fewer chemicals but produce less food. This shift creates a second-order crisis. Because corn is a foundational input for the global livestock and dairy industries, a localized change in planting rapidly drives structural hyperinflation across the entire food chain. A global conflict today weaponizes hunger. It allows an adversary to induce mass starvation across entire regions without ever dropping a bomb on a farm or a grain silo. Out on the open ocean, specialized vessels like this ASEAN cable ship are responsible for maintaining the physical internet. Despite the talk of the cloud, 95% of international data relies on a fragile network of deep-sea fiber optic cables. When a digital choke point like the Red Sea is sabotaged, the data doesn't vanish, but it has to be rerouted. Internet protocols send information thousands of miles out of the way, often through heavily congested backup channels. This rerouting introduces latency. A delay of just 200 milliseconds, imperceptible to a human, is enough to crash high-frequency financial trading platforms and the cloud logistics systems that manage global enterprise. This digital chaos occurs alongside the transition to intelligentized warfare. This is a paradigm where military AI processes battlefield data and executes strikes at speeds that outpace human command. The combination of severed digital infrastructure and autonomous AI creates a feedback loop. When systems operate beyond human oversight in a degraded network, they can trigger escalations that diplomats have no way to intercept. Traditional institutions like the United Nations were designed for the geopolitical realities of the 1940s. They are structurally incapable of mitigating a fast-moving systemic collapse that weaponizes civilian infrastructure. As these systems fail, we enter the Great Fragmentation. Legacy superpowers are finding that their global influence is tied to vulnerable, far-flung supply chains they can no longer guarantee, causing their authority to dilute. In response, rising middle powers are prioritizing local resilience. India's Mission Sudarshan Chakra provides a template for this, integrating AI and indigenous manufacturing to build a dense, overlapping shield against the saturation attacks of modern war. The focus of national security is shifting toward Atmanirbharta, or strategic self-reliance. Survival in this era depends on internalizing the entire loop, from nitrogen fertilizer production to domestic AI-driven defense networks. If a global conflict begins tomorrow,